Okay, so we're going to be talking about lead in schools, which is really timely because children are going back to school either this week, last week, or, sometime in September. So we wanted to make sure that we had kind of an informative video that people could share amongst their communities, and just make sure that people had accurate information on lead being in schools and all of the problems that can come from that. So if you are one of the parents who are sending their kids back to school for the first time in maybe 18 months, we understand that there are so many things to be concerned about, and it's a different time than other back to schools in previous years. So we are definitely aware of that reality. There is, however, one aspect of back to school that often goes overlooked. And I think I speak for everyone at Hydroviv in saying that we're certainly concerned that this year in particular, that this issue could certainly be overlooked because of all the moving parts and because of all of the things that school districts are dealing with COVID. So we're going to kind of get into everything that you need to know about lead in drinking water and sending your kids back to school and kind of what that means and what it might look like. We'll get into it just kind of by talking about why lead is so harmful to children. So lead is a neurotoxin, and children actually, as they're developing, their brains can think that lead is calcium. So in that case, lead would cross the blood-brain barrier and be absorbed in the same way that calcium is, which is really important to bone growth. So it's important that children are not exposed to any level of lead. And the American Academy of Pediatrics has determined that there is no safe level of lead exposure for children. It should always be zero, whether it's in drinking water, lead paint, or any other sources. There's just no acceptable level for a child to be consuming or ingesting or whatever. So why are we making this declaration now? Like, why is it important at the beginning of the school year? And so this is one of the questions that we get asked a lot, and people aren't really aware of why lead accumulates when water is just sitting stagnant in an old building, in a school, in an office, like wherever it is. But lead actually increases when stagnant water is just kind of sitting there collecting lead as it leaches out from the pipes. And so this can happen in a school over a summer vacation, over a winter break, and even over the weekend. So you might imagine that this 18-month lockdown for schools, that water has been sitting stagnant for longer than we've ever seen before, really. So that being said, we can expect to see these high levels of lead right when kids go back to school. And because so many schools have been vacant, there's just not really an opportunity for that water to be flowing, for the corrosion inhibitors to be doing their jobs. And so some school districts have flushing protocols in place, which is awesome. A lot of school districts don't, and it really depends on if your school district has the resources or has a custodian or a building manager who is keeping on top of that flushing, whether it be over the weekend, breaks, whatever it is. It's really dependent on the school district. So we'll kind of get into why schools and childcare facilities are the most susceptible to lead contamination when other buildings might not be. So as I just stated, the closures, a lot of office buildings, maybe they'll close for a week at a time for winter break or holidays or whatever it is. But no other buildings have like a designated 3-month period where it's almost entirely vacant. It's really just schools where that experience happens. Schools in the United States are old. So the Department of Ed conducted a survey to kind of gauge where we're at with our schools and really try to further understand how widespread this lead problem is in our schools. And the study found that the average age of a school in the US is 44 years old. And so that would put it before the period of time when lead pipes were banned. So you might imagine that a lot of the schools in the US are made with lead pipes, plumbing, and infrastructure. And so on top of that, we also have a vulnerable population, children. So when you kind of put all of these factors together, you have like the perfect storm of lead exposure. And so we just wanted to convey that there is no safe level of lead, and that the schools in the US overwhelmingly have lead pipes. And it's just something to kind of be aware of. So this is probably one of the most surprising statistics that we found at Hydroviv while doing our research. And I think that parents and members of the community automatically, I will get to that question in a second. We just wanted to convey to parents that some schools don't test for lead, but parents and members of the community may automatically think that they do, just because it would make sense that a school district with young children would be testing for a neurotoxin. Unfortunately, there is no regulation, no federal regulation that enforces testing in schools. States can decide if they want to have a testing requirement, but it's not federally regulated. It's not federally mandated. So unfortunately, a lot of schools don't require testing, and only 15 states in the US have testing mandates for lead in drinking water. Sorry, my dad's coming back from a bike ride. So 43% of schools tested for lead in drinking water in 2018. So not even half of the schools across the country. So kind of to just summarize everything and talk about some action steps. We have not solved the lead crisis in the US. We have not solved the lead crisis for our most vulnerable populations. And children are still being exposed to lead at high levels, higher than recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So if you're watching this or listening to this and you're thinking, what can I do? The first thing that we always recommend is go to your superintendent or your school district or whomever and bring up a pipe flushing protocol. Ask if they have one in place. Ask, how they can get one going if there isn't one in place. That's, step number one. You can also send your kid to school with bottled water or filtered water from home in like a big water bottle. Those are other options as well, but we just really are hoping that this video can act as a resource in communities where, you might not be certain if you have a lead flushing protocol, because we know that flushing works for schools in particular. So I hope that this was helpful for everyone. And please share with people who you might think would benefit from this video. And you can always ask us questions. You can send us a DM. You can also go to hydroviv.com and chat one of our water nerds. You can also email us at hello@hydroviv.com for any questions. We'd be happy to answer. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week for another live. Oh, just kidding. I would like to read and answer this question. Okay, so Justin Rondon asked a question about PFAS. So it's not a microplastic. And the term industry pollute, industrial pollutant would be probably the right way to categorize it, but PFAS have been detected, sorry, my dog is saying hi. PFAS have been used in consumer goods like non-stick fabrics or stain-resistant fabrics, non-stick surfaces, things of that nature. Also in firefighting foam. So it's actually pretty widespread in consumer products that you might not even really think of. So there are several factories across the country that produce products using PFAS chemicals, and then the byproducts of that are what are being polluted into our environment. So yeah, they are called forever chemicals as well. That's kind of a term that's being used more in the media just to kind of try to really reinforce that they don't break down easily in the environment, and they are persistent. They can travel through groundwater without breaking down. So, if you have a factory 10 miles away from a water source, whether by groundwater or just regular surface water runoff, that water source can become contaminated just by how persistent these chemicals are. So I hope that answers your question. If you want more detail, you can DM us, and we have so many resources on our website that talk about PFAS. Okay, so yeah, everyone have a good one. See you next week. Bye.